Right, thank you everybody. Good morning. I'll try not to keep all of you from your coffee for too long. And I'll perhaps preface this by saying that this is actually probably more aspirational than anything at this point. Because as I said before, there's no guarantee that there will even be a WHO snakebite program next year because there's no funding. 2018, the World Health Assembly adopted a resolution on snakebite investing. That resolution said that WHO needed to do certain things. It also said the countries needed to do certain things. The countries need to contribute. The countries need to take action themselves. And mostly, they've done nothing. They've given us great words. They've given us wonderful documents, regional action programs, individual country protocols, but by and large, none of them have put a single cent behind it. And this is where we all made a very big tactical mistake. We've spent a lot of time and money and effort on activism up to the point where that resolution passed. And then we all just said, well, all sorted, be great from here on in. The cold, harsh reality is it's not going to be great. WHO has not received a single contribution from any of the countries towards snakebite, not a single cent. And if we don't continue to apply the sort of pressure we applied pre-2018 and hold their feet to the fire and get them to genuinely engage on this topic, then everything we present to you today may well be for naught. But having said that, I'm a bit of an eternal optimist. And so, not going to work. No, it's not going to work. All right, let's see if that goes. And so a very quick summary, the 4 pillars of the roadmap, and I'm not going to go into them in great detail. Beth has already talked about the work that's being done around the procurement packs and the minimum specifications for health facilities. She also has a big community engagement toolkit about to go out for public consultation as a final step towards its publication online. Later this year, next month, in fact, International Snakebite Awareness Day, WHO will be running seminars around the world, and we're continuing to build a database of CE community engagement stakeholders that can support implementation activities. A big focus of what we do, of course, and what I'm going to focus on today is around the safe and effective treatment side of things. The first target product profile for Sub-Saharan Africa is published and online. The second TPP for the South Asian region is under public consultation, I think, as of the beginning of September. And there are 2 additional TPPs, one on small molecule inhibitors and one on engineered antibody therapeutics that should be out for public consultation before the end of the year. We have 26 antivenoms undergoing risk-benefit assessment this year, covering 3 regions, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East and North Africa, and the South Asian region. 3 African products have already been recommended for procurement. The stockpile project Beth touched upon is hopefully going to move to the pilot phase. That may well be the one thing that we are able to continue doing. And we're going to talk about very quickly at the end of this a Muri framework for antivenoms, and I'll explain what that's all about. In terms of health systems themselves, like I said, some things are happening. There are regional action plans taking place. The DHIS2 epidemiology platform that we have is being used to collect and collate basic epidemiological data from countries. It's still vastly incomplete because it doesn't consider the community level cases. It's only what's being reported within health systems, but some of it's substantial. For example, we've got 40 years of data for Sudan and South Sudan, all religiously collected by their Ministry of Health over the years. So that's very useful. In PAHO, they actually are working on a project, antivenom manufacturing, strengthening of networks between the manufacturers. They're also hoping to develop a set of clinical guidelines and a regional plan. So as I mentioned, TPPs, these are target product profiles. These are essential guidance documents to help manufacturers, regulators, researchers to come up with products that are actually fit for use in the marketplace. We have an 18-member technical and scientific advisory group that contemplates what should go into these. We pull in experts from outside to give them advice, and they eventually come up with this draft document. It goes out to public consultation first before it's adopted. Then it goes back to them and all the changes are taken into account before they finally come out. It's now available on the web. And as I said, the one for South Asian products will be coming out onto the website for people to look at in around about a week and a half. Now, they cover a lot of things. They have a scope. They look at the target population, geographic working ranges for products, indications and contraindications, all those sorts of things. They look at manufacturing considerations, what venoms are going to be used, what is going to be the active pharmaceutical ingredient, what's the finished product form, etc. We look at performance, preclinical, clinical effectiveness, safety, tolerability, the possibility of drug interactions, dose regimens, everything right down to packing and packaging. And in terms of the operational considerations, also take into account things like cost, what other supportive and adjunctive therapies may be required, and what sort of training and education may be needed for users to make the most of them. So they cover a lot of different topics. Our biggest project, though, is this risk-benefit assessment of antivenoms at the moment. I've talked about it before, and that's because it's been going on now for about 3 years. It takes 3 parts. We have an expert committee that do a dossier review. We undergo comprehensive laboratory analysis of samples of these products to pull all of the wings off them. And we do GMP inspections of facilities to make sure that manufacturers are compliant with WHO GMP. All of that information then goes back to the technical advisory group who make a final decision about whether it's going to be listed. And to give you an idea, in sub-Saharan Africa, recommendations have been given for Equitab G, Anti-Vitamin Africa, and the most recent one, Pan-Af Premium. We have another, I think, 9 or 10. So there's 3 from Biological E, for example, there's the SAVP, the Equitab Plus ICP, 5 products, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, something like that from Vins Bioproducts. And we have 1 product that had been terminated and has not come back to us yet, and that's Inocent's Pan-African product. Now, most recently, one of the big things that's happened is with the recommendation of Pan-Africa. One of the things that the manufacturer had to accept as part of the assessment was that a single standard 2 vial per patient dose was just not going to cut it therapeutically. There was no evidence to support continuing to make that recommendation. So they have now got a schedule that they recommend, 1 to 3 vials for Echis, 3 to 6 vials for Bitis, I think it's 10 to 25 vials for Dendroaspis, and between 20 and 40 vials for Cobras. Comparatively, it is a product that contains around about 45% of the protein of the SAVP product. A serious mamba bite in Africa, you'll get 10 vials of SAVP. That's equivalent to about 25 vials of the Pan-Af product. So in terms of the amount of immunoglobulin being administered, comparable. Your 10 vials of SAVP are going to cost about $120 each. Your 25 vials of Pan-Af are going to cost you about $30 each. The cost is almost exactly the same. So you're getting the same amount of immunoglobulin, you're getting the same cost. So there's no real difference there. But 2 other things that they've done as part of this is accept the fact that even at very high doses, these products are probably not going to be effective for Cobras. They now give in their supportive treatment advice quite a lot of advice on how you use adjunctive therapies, airway management, the use of things like anticholinesterases to support those patients, as well as just giving antivenom. And in addition to that, one of the confounding things for clinicians is they get a vial of product and they see this is good for 25 LD50s of all these venoms or 20 LD50s of this. And there's no context. What does it mean? Does that mean I can use this for 25 people? No information has been provided, and it's very confusing for clinicians. It actually means that 1 ml can typically neutralise the average amount of venom that would kill 25 mice, 25 LD50s. So now in their package insert, they not only provide that is their specification, but they will tell you how many micrograms of venom that's equivalent to, so that you have some understanding of the fact that they're not all equal. So for example, it's probably hard for you to see, but 25 LD50s of Bitis arietans, with the venom that they use, 338 micrograms, whereas for Najahaji, 25 LD50s is only 152. For Echis leucogastra, it's actually 872 micrograms. So it's to give people an idea that not all venoms are the same and that the potency is variable. And this is a little bit more helpful to clinicians than what they've probably had in the past. We've had a lot of antivenoms come into the laboratory from all over the place. In the MENA region, we have products from Egypt, products manufactured in India, Iran, Israel, and even the United Kingdom. In South Asia, nearly all from India with one exception, the polyvalent product from the National Institute of Health in Pakistan. And we're currently in the middle of GMP inspections of all of these facilities, which is why I'll be leaving here pretty quickly later today. The information goes up onto our website in the PQ department. People can find the outcomes and the information about the process there. The other big piece of work, and like I said, this is what we hope is going to move forward next year, we're fairly confident it will, is an antivenom stockpile project pilot. It'll involve 8 West African countries with a range of different operational requirements. Briefly, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Ghana, Niger, Nigeria, and Togo. The aim is to have a minimum of at least 2 WHO recommended products. These products will be held by the manufacturers. They'll have a contract to have a certain number of vials available for us to draw upon. When we need them, they'll be sent to WHO's procurement hub, and that procurement hub will then handle the logistics of getting them out to the countries. And then it becomes very much a locally driven project. This is not going to be a top-down project. This project will be administered and managed from Africa by people in the countries, support from the African Regional Office of WHO, and support from ministries of health in the countries where it takes place. There will be a need for operational and commodities funding. They're 2 different pies. There's the operational work, but then there's the actual cost of procuring the products themselves. And initially that'll be donor funded. Subsequently, it'll be a revolving facility which will be sustained by the governments reimbursing the stockpile for what they use. There's a lot of data that's gone into informing this plan. It ranges from everything from consensus snake distribution, habitat sustainability models. And the pretty picture shows you in a darkish brown all of the areas where all 4 major genera occur. So Echis, Bitis, Naja, and Dendroaspis. In these countries, the pink areas show you all the areas where you've got everything except Echis. To give you an idea of where they're likely to be major causes of snakebite. We have epidemiological, health facilities, supply chain, infrastructure data. We have a big piece of work being done at the moment on health economics analysis and modelling, everything from looking at the costs of the manufacturing of the products we're likely to use to the actual cost effectiveness of those products in the field, as well as the cost benefit analysis of different supply chain technologies for getting the antivenoms for where they need to go. We're also looking at the conduct of a small clinical trial to establish the safety and effective doses for both of these products, because for one of them that we're considering at the moment, there is currently no clinical data, and part of our due diligence demands that we do actually have some clinical evidence that at the doses that are recommended, the product is actually going to be effective. As I said, this will be regionally driven through government, AFRO, local experts, civil society, and other implementation partners. To give you an idea of some more of the data, these are the individual risk maps for contact with different groups of snakes. The darker the colour, the more likely the contact, and these are showing risk from 25 to 100%. So this is the confluence of both animal ecology information, climate data, and human ecology and human behaviour data to tell us where people are most likely to encounter different types of animals. Combining that, we can then look at the travel times. We can say, well, if somebody gets bitten in this particular community, how long will it take them to get to the nearest health facility where we could conceivably put antivenom? So again, this is aspirational travel time. We've also used a similar approach using Access Mod 5 to look at how long it's going to take in particular countries for product to get from the central store. In the example on the left, this is Togo, to get from central store on the coast to the very extreme top end of the country. And then on the other side of the coin, from that divisional distribution centre to get to all of the health centres that it's responsible for. On the other side, we're showing again the travel time from patients to health centres, and then the populations at risk. So you can see on the right-hand side, the very extreme calculations of how many people in different areas are at risk depending on the distance they're going to be from healthcare. So for example, if I put my glasses on, the darkest colour shows that in the highest risk area, there are 52,883 people who would have to travel more than 6 hours to get to a health facility. So these are your last mile people. These are the ones that we really need to make an effort to ensure that they actually do have better access. As part of this, we've also got to look to the future because we want to see this program expand. We might start with 8 countries, but if it's successful and sustainable, the idea would be eventually it would roll out across all of Africa. So we have to consider what's going to happen with climate change. Are animal distributions going to change? Are people going to start to encounter species in certain areas that they never have before? And so this is an example of our modelling for Dendroaspis polylepis. On the left-hand side, the current suitability is shown at the top. Areas in yellow are highly suitable. Those that are least suitable are those in dark blue. And by 2050, we show you the comparison of that at the bottom. And then to make it a little bit easier to visualise, if you look at the map on the right-hand side of your screen, those areas in red up in Somalia and in areas down in South Africa, go from yellow through to red, are areas where this species is likely to expand its range. Those that are now in blue in the DRC, parts of northern Kenya, Ethiopia and Somalia, are areas where the range may well contract and that animal may no longer be present there. So we're looking to the future in terms of that as well. Now, before I finish, I want to pose a hypothetical. At a time when millions of people are vulnerable to snake bites, thousands of people are dying, many more are being left with disabilities, can we really afford the luxury of continuing with this concept of running very expensive, very technically complex, logistically, politically risky clinical trials? Can we really afford to do it? And the cartoon basically says what I think of it. If we don't change anything at all, something magical just happens. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But this is the reality. Deaths are going through the roof. Availability of safe, effective products is going through the floor. We need to change the way we think about getting these products into the market. And at the risk of offending people, we no longer have the ability to indulge in what I call the 3 Ps. Papers, professorships and PhDs as the central outcome of research. We've got to put products on the ground to the benefit of the people who are dying. We can't afford to wait 5 years while we conduct expensive trials with all sorts of fancy designs and all the bells and whistles, and then at the end of it, we actually don't recommend anything. We don't put anything into the field. People are still dying. And all those people who may have been given hope have none. This is what we've been doing for 40 years. And so far, there's only been one good clinical trial in all of sub-Saharan Africa that's resulted in new products entering the game. Only one in 40 years. It's a bit of a joke. So, what do we do about it? Well, WHO ethicists have spent a lot of time thinking about this for other reasons. And you imagine a scenario where you have a health emergency. People are dying in the hundreds every day. it looks like it's going to be never ending. Somebody turns around and says, well, we've just developed a drug that might be useful, but we don't have the money for a clinical trial. If we do, it's going to take us 10 years to get it to market. There's your quandary. What do you do about all those people who are dying right now? Well, WHO were faced with this prospect in 2014 with the Ebola virus disease in West Africa. And they came up with a framework. It's called the Monitored Emergency Use of Unregistered and Experimental Interventions, MURI. Been used for Ebola twice, both in West Africa and in the DRC. It was also used extensively through the COVID pandemic. So we've had a couple of consultative meetings, and we're now looking at the possibility of adapting this model to provide a pathway where if you're a country who has no effective antivenom, nothing available, and there are places in South Africa where this is happening right this minute, where the only available product is no longer available and people are dying literally in front of them. You need a mechanism where products can be made available in an ethical manner, in a supervised manner, where right decisions can be made and we can move things ahead and people can get treatment now, not in 5 or 10 years' time. So, some of the basic requirements for this, you have to have that situation. It has to be a situation where it's not feasible or immediately amenable to go out and perform a clinical trial in a timely enough manner to make a difference. You have to have some good quality preclinical data that an independent panel of experts are willing to turn around and say, yes, this offers sufficient promise that if we use this in a controlled and supervised manner, we may actually see a benefit rather than a negative response. You have to have the funding to be able to get the product into the country. You have to be able to put up a DSMB, Data Safety and Monitoring Board, under the supervision of a competent National Ethics Committee. You have to be able to manage and supervise all of the cases such that periodic review of cases takes place. Initially, it could be as many as every 10. They get a review to see whether they're on the right track and they change the protocol and the dose accordingly. Eventually, you might get to the stage where you've got enough confidence that you only need to do a review every 6 or 12 months. And of course, hopefully, as the data accumulates, you get to the point where you can say, well, actually, we've got enough data now to say that, look, we can just go ahead and use this for whatever we need to do because it's been shown to be safe and it's been shown to be effective. It's not a perfect situation. And we all have to accept too that for many of us, it's a confronting thing to think about because we all hate one thing. We all hate change. We all hate to think that the way we've been doing our work for the last 40 years might not be being as beneficial as we thought it was. And so I would suggest that when the time comes and this document comes out for consultation, don't just immediately dismiss it. Don't feel threatened by it. Sit down and do what I've had to do. And I've run clinical trials in countries. I've done research in countries, and I thought that was the only way to do it. You have to eventually accept, though, that you may actually be doing more harm than good by withholding treatment from people who desperately need it at a time when there are mechanisms available that could make it happen faster. So don't resist change. Think about it. Give us your comments when the document goes out for consultation. And hopefully we can make some positive change that will help a lot more people get what they need, which is treatment right now. All right, thanks very much for that.